Youth engagement in policy making and governance across the African continent. That is our topic for today, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome. The relevance of youth engagement in the emergence of the African continent and the future of a new world order also assumes a vital significance as the continent has over 407 million that constitute its youth population. It's worth noting that experts are of the opinion that Africa's youth contribute collectively to searching for solutions to humanity's most complex problems that could range from unleashing youth power for innovation, skills, social development, education, as well as entrepreneurship, climate change, and migration, poverty reduction, amidst others, including income inequality. It's worth noting that in this contemporary society, Africa's youth have been encouraged to actively participate in policymaking and governance across the African continent. Of course, today we are asking the question, them taking part, could these lead to the emergence of Africa? Though it remains, is the environment conducive enough to have a youth participation? We're analyzing the stakes involved. The question remains, how feasible is youth engagement in the critical affairs of every nation? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. This is Talking Point over your Pan-African television. Stay with us. Hello, Africa and the world. Thank you, Mansly, for joining us on the first dose of Talking Point over your number one Pan-African channel for You Media Africa. Today, we are picking interest in youth engagement, in decision making, as well as governance in Africa. Of course, to evoke this very topic of discussion amidst the calls by heads of state across Africa for the youth to take part in Africa's development. We have as guest a panel for today constituted of Dr. NGWANYAM, an entrepreneur as well as a political analyst. Greetings to you, Doc.
Oh, thanks, Sharon, and thanks to my guest, the other guest. I was listening very keenly to what you were saying, and I hope the others also joined in. You know, I was so focused on just youth and the politics, and I was feeling so negative. But once you expanded, I became more comfortable. So I hope we'll be able to have a lot to share.
Definitely. It's all about the emergence of the African continent. By my left is Dr. ASONG Michael Kumar, who is a member of the Rwandan Bar Association and a member of the East African Law Society, is equally a politician. Greetings to you, sir.
Greetings, Madam NJIX, and greetings to my co-panelists.
It's a pleasure to have you both on board this afternoon to evoke this topic about youth engagement in decision making and definitely governance on the African continent. To dive right into discussions, now we look at leadership across the African continent. We equally look at the distribution of power. I'll channel this first question to you, Dr. Asun, given you're into the political sphere of the continent. And now with these in mind, how would you evaluate youth engagement in policy making as well as governance across Africa?
Well, when it concerns youth engagement, we realize that there is some sort of degradation because today we have an African society, and particularly in Cameroon, which is being ruled by the aged. So we have gerontocratic regimes all around Africa, and that automatically has given youths the impression that they are not yet ripe enough to engage themselves, be it politically or be it in the development of their different countries. So it's worth noting that you will be very surprised today that when we look at the definition of youths, generally from an international point of view, they'll tell you that a youth is one who is below 35 years. But when you come to a country like Cameroon, you realize that you see people who are already 50 years old thinking they are still youths. So we realize that it's difficult to have some sort of youth engagement in our different African countries because their responsibilities and the awareness that had to go with their role towards their nation has been prohibited by those who are ruling, because they believe that if they are able to keep the youths away from that consciousness of taking part actively in politics, then automatically they'll be able to stay there for a longer period of time. And that is what they are actually doing today. So that is the reason why when you go across Africa, you will realize that due to the type of political regimes which we have, and mostly those being governed by presidents who are old, you realize that the youths don't really get involved. So that's one of the issues. The next issue is about the government not actually playing its role as a father. To build a very strong community, we have three sociological units in the society. We have the government, we have the family, and we have the individual. So the government has not really played its role in bringing up youths to the consciousness of the fact that they have a role to play in the development of their country. And that actually goes through the type of education which is being given to different African youths. So we will realize that our education is not one which renders the youths autonomous or encourage them to be creative, to have ideas, to think of how they can develop their country. Because for a country to develop, the youths play a fundamental role, because they first of all represent the future of that nation. So if we look at governance in the ideology of continuity, it means that those who are leading must make sure that they inculcate the same ideas, the same mentality, so that there should be an assurance in the continuity of the state that will lead to a sustainable development. But we don't have that type of education being given to youths today. So youths are more like struggling to exist and not actually conscious of the fact that they already exist and have a role to play in the type of governance system which is going to help us have more youth engagement and prosper our nation. And more to that, we have the role of the family, which is something which is very, very fundamental, because parents too have a role to play in bringing up their children. But with the hardship we have today, all around Africa and particularly in Cameroon, we have wars, we have crises. All of those things have impacted youths in one way or the other. So as such, you realize that youths are not really given that opportunity to express themselves based on the different political failures which we are having today. So when we talk about youth engagement in Africa, it's something which is very far-fetched, because our leaders have not put the youths at the center of their governance and have not made the youths a priority. So automatically it becomes difficult for youths to express themselves, even though we have a few cases, but that is not what we are looking for. What we want is a collective type of movement where youths will be conscious of their responsibilities, work hand in hand together, and united. If they work, then certainly they shall stand and build a more prosperous and stable nation and African continent.
You evoked something here. You spoke about togetherness in ensuring that there's the development of the African continent. Now we are talking of policy making. We're talking of decision making in Africa, which could lead to the emergence of the continent. Now, Dr. Nick, you are into say youth empowerment and youth growth. Now, in that light, when you look at policies in Africa, you look at policies in Cameroon, in your opinion, what is the status of youth policies on the continent?
There is a problem here, but before I even answer your question, in case I do forget, just
Yes.
Remind me. Let me step back a little bit and let's look at a few things. For starters, you said that there were about
407
million youths in Africa.
Africa.
And we know that the population of Africa is about 1.3, 1.4
Yes.
million, so to speak. 1.4 billion, right?
Yes.
And then we also know that the youths are about 60, 65, 70% of the population. So if you do that, you'll be going up to 650, 700. Okay, so let's get it right there.
Yes.
So we have more youths than that. And I guess when whoever was doing these statistics was taking youths who are, let's say, about 18 to 35 or 40, those of them who should actually be active on the field, but they didn't count the others. So if you add that
Yes.
lot, and you know it's a
It was
continuum.
actually a statistics from those of 25 up to 39.
All right, I get it. Now it makes sense. It makes sense. Thanks. Now, even before we get lost again, you know, the concept of leadership. What is leadership? There are two terms. There's leadership and there's management.
Yes.
Okay? And in Africa, for some odd reason, when you talk of leadership, people always look back at politics. And like I was saying, when you were doing your introduction, you spread the leadership thing out. But I'm sure a lot of people, because of their biased mind, still did not get it. You see, everybody is born a leader, and you are a leader in that area where you are specialized.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's take, for instance, I know your mother cooks very well. But you are to bring all the women who cook together. Your mother will beat them at the cooking and lead them in cooking and so on. So she is a leader at cookery. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So everybody should look for that sphere in which they really excel, where their vision is clear, where they understand what the issues are, and where they can lead others to increase productivity. If we define leadership that way, then we'll see that even in the garage, the young man doing a good job there, keeping the garage clean, making sure that he keeps the statistics of things, following his master very well, he grows into a good leader. So leadership, this thing about thinking that when they talk about leadership, you think of President Paul Biya, President Kagame. No, that's not it. That's not leadership. I mean, that's not. It's a small portion of what we understand to be leadership. So I just wanted to make that very clear, so that people should not think that if Paul Biya doesn't make way, you cannot be a leader. No, that's wrong.
Yeah.
Grow to be a leader where you are, excel in what you are doing, and then show other youths, pass on that capacity to the other youths to be able to emulate what you are doing, so that this leadership thing is like fanning everybody wherever they are, and the whole nation moves forward. So it's got nothing to do with President Paul Biya. It got nothing to do with President Kagame. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Though they could do something to crank that up, which they are not doing, or probably doing but not very well. But for everybody to sit and cross their arms and wait for President Paul Biya or President Kagame is completely wrong. I just wanted to make that clear. I hope you agree with me.
I don't.
Thank you.
I don't really-
Okay. Now, but
Yes.
that said, yesterday we were talking about the enabling environment.
Yes.
We are saying that those governments are supposed to create the enabling environment in which the youths can grow. So when
Yes.
you don't create that environment, they feel stunted. They cannot express themselves. As far as that is concerned, I mean, you say that, and of course you are correct. But what I was trying to get at was to make sure that people realize that everybody has a responsibility. Don't sit. There's no day that somebody is going to ring the bell and say that there is a conducive environment. Now wake up from slumber. It doesn't exist. And you know that it's sometimes when the time is, when it's tough, that's when the leaders actually come out. Because, like, you have done what is it called? Is metamorphosis. You know metamorphosis in biology,
Yes.
where a butterfly goes from the pupa to caterpillar to and then I think it's first caterpillar to pupa or
Yeah,
whatever.
it's a whole process.
It's a full process, right? And then just before it comes out as a butterfly, it eats through the cocoon and then jumps out. You see that process of eating through the cocoon? Somebody made an experiment. He saw one of those pupae trying to get out of the cocoon. And so he thought he was helping the caterpillar, and went and opened the casing so that the caterpillar would come out easily. Do you know what happened? The butterfly fell down and died. Do you know why? It happens that nature put it in such a way that during that birth process, so to speak, when the pupa is eating through the cocoon to come out, the pupa has got fluid in its abdomen. That pressure forcing itself pushes the pressure up the pressure in the abdomen, and then the fluid now goes into the wings, and then the wings become good enough for flying. So because the pupa did not go through that, it couldn't fly. Which tells us that if Dr. ASONG is here, and let's say I had the power and I just look at him, he's a nice guy, I make him prime minister, the country will collapse because he has not gone through the process. I don't know where you're getting what I'm saying. It's not because I know you, I love you, you're my son, you're my what. No. You have to go through the process and mature into it and know what you are doing. So for you to just think that, power will just be bestowed on you and then you become a king is bestowed, it doesn't work like that. And to be able to even ask for more, there's a principle: do the little you can wherever you are with the little you have. That is a principle. Once you do that, people are never looking at the big things you have done. They are looking at what did you do with the 2 talents. And when you have done well with the 2 talents, you will get more talents. That is a principle. So you see a lot of youth drinking, doing some stupid things, not being, not engaging themselves in capacity building and helping the nation or voluntary work. And so you just sit and you are drinking and you're running around thinking that, one day President Paul Biya will go and I just go there and grab. It doesn't work like that. I just wanted to make this clear so that we don't make any mistakes about it. So everybody, it's like a race and everything is out there, and it is your capacity that takes you there. And even if you wanted to be, let's say, a leader in the political field, you must first show your capacity in the family, that you are good enough at sweeping the floor, at washing papa's shirts, ironing them, being organized. Are you seeing those little things you do? Those little things you do in the house, they count. So if you have a young man just sitting down watching television and doing WhatsApp and thinking that, and then he has had 25 points at the GCA level because he had 25 points and he's the only male in the family, is very important, it will not work. These basic things, I wanted us to get them clear. Am I wrong, Doctor?
No, you aren't.
Because we are talking down there to youth, you and I, we give them the real things because there are a lot of misconceptions out there, and that's what we are here for. So that said, once we have cleared that, we are now going out there to talk to those youths who have been doing what I'm saying, not just everybody. Those that have come, that have risen above the crowd. It is those youths that, even though they are doing the different things, they are the ones to which political power will be given. They are the ones to which economic power will be given. They are the ones who will cause the development to happen because they have it in their genetic material. They have it in their character to do what is necessary. And before I give you back the microphone, the leader and the manager, those two terms are very confusing. But somebody explained it to me sometime, and I got it once and for all. So a leader, it's we for those of you who don't know from around the world, we have some plantations here in part of our country in the southwest region of Cameroon. There are palms, there's rubber, there's banana, and I think there must be pineapple somewhere, and all sorts of plantations, right?
Yeah.
So this is how it works. A leader is someone who sits in an helicopter and has an overall view of everything, of all the plantations. So as he is going over the plantations, he can say that there are bananas that are ripe over there, and so he would tell a manager, please move your team over there to the banana plantation and harvest them. So a leader is someone who is above. He has a bird's eye view of the whole thing and can manage a bigger thing by redirecting resources and so on, and doing so in an efficient manner. That's a leader, and he has a vision, driving the company or the nation or whatever towards that vision. That's a leader. A manager is someone who is doing micromanagement. He's doing the day-to-day thing. He executes bits and pieces of the vision as are given to him, but he's not responsible for the big vision. You see, our ministers in Cameroon, they are managers. President Paul Biya is the vision bearer. He's the leader. Are you getting what I'm saying? While the ministers are managers, but that doesn't stop them from bringing their leadership capabilities into action. Thank you very much.
Thank you immensely. Now we proceed. You've highlighted some key points. Now, over to you, Dr. Asong. Now, he mentioned points that are hindering leadership in Africa, say the youth, or prohibiting youths from actively engaging in, say, the affairs of the continent. Now, similarly, in your opinion, what's hindering youth active engagement in policy making and governance?
Well, I will not certainly agree on every point that my co-panelist mentioned, because I believe that youths are like babies, or they are like children. They lack a mental capacity they lack direction. And there are people in the society who are responsible to give them that direction. And when we talk about those people in the society responsible to give them that direction, we are talking of two individuals here. We are talking about the state, and we are talking about the family or the parents. It's true that my co-panelists mentioned that the youth also have their personal responsibility, and that's where the third person gets into play, and that is the youth or the individual himself. But it will be very difficult to blame an individual for not personally developing appropriately when the rightful environment was not being put in place by those considered as leaders in their lives to help them or direct them in a path where they could be really efficient and valuable in our society. And that's why I will always stick on the government and the role of the parents, you see. And if we want to start here, we'll start with the government. Today, we are having a government that is extremely discouraging. You won't imagine. When my co-panelist talks of individual capacities or motivations, yes. I remember when I was preparing my entrance exams into medical school, I can assure you, I read 20 hours a day and slept for 4 hours. And what was the reason? Everybody I spoke to, they told me, oh, you're an orphan. You'll never get into that medical school. You don't know anybody. You don't have réseau. You don't have this. You don't have that. So I said to myself, okay, I really want to be a medical doctor. I have to devise a strategy. So my strategy was, I have to be amongst the first 5. So if they just have to choose 5 medical doctors in these particular exams where you have about 4,000 people writing, then I'll certainly be amongst them. So I had to read in fact, I nearly crashed because my mom really got scared at one point. But then, is every youth capable of doing that? Is every youth capable of having that type of environment that can help him do certain things? And that I would say no. So if the government has put in place a system where there is corruption, has put in place a system where there is tribalism, has put in place a system where there is favoritism, there's nepotism, how do we expect youths to express themselves? We have had situations of youths coming up with extremely innovative and creative projects. But then the government won't sponsor these projects. And sometimes it is even somebody who does not even have a befitting project who is being awarded the partnership or is being sponsored. So these are things that are discouraging youths. Nowadays, you look at even our educative system. The government is not paying teachers. And teachers play a fundamental role in educating the youths. And that's why today we see youths who are dwelling in a pool of moral decadence. Because they don't have, the teachers are not there to guide them and to lead them because they are not well paid. If the teachers are not well paid, how do you expect the teachers to work efficiently in helping those children build the necessary capacity that will lead them to their own independence? It becomes impossible. More to that, some of these teachers go without salaries for months and the government doesn't pay them. So when you look at all these different issues, you realize that it becomes very difficult for youths to express themselves. There are so many youths who are struggling out there. They are doing their best. They are struggling to do things for themselves, struggling to get jobs, but they won't get those jobs because of all of these things I have earlier stated. You realize that there is a particular entrance exam to a notary public profession, and you see the same names. You see those who have not even written the exams, their names appearing on the list. So what do you expect the other youths to do? it's a whole system that drains the youth. It discourages them. And let me tell you, in medicine today, it has been established that poor governance is a cause for mental health disorders. So just due to the fact that a government governs very poorly, rules very poorly, it has a serious impact on the mental health of the citizens. And that is why you see today, you realize so many of our youths are getting into drugs, are doing crazy things. They walk around with weapons, brutalizing others. So those are the effects of the poor governance system we are having today. And when you have such an environment, a political environment that actually causes an impact on the mental well-being of its citizens, and particularly the youths, then it becomes very, very difficult to actually blame the youth for anything happening. So that is what is happening. That the government has actually failed in its role in supervising the youths and permitting the youths to be able to develop appropriately. Nevertheless, the family too has a role, because if the government fails, the family should have a role to correct some of these things. And that's where we realize that even the parents themselves, I don't know if it's because of the poor governance system, but I think it's because of the poor governance system that also affects the mental stability of parents who, because of hardship, who, because of increased cost of life and the rest, difficulties which they face on a daily basis, are not able to educate their children appropriately. Because if the government fails and the parents are focused on their duties and obligations as parents towards their children, then certainly they will be able to correct some of these deviances and help the children develop appropriately. So that is the way I look at it. I will not want to focus on the youths themselves, but I want to say that before we want to incriminate the youths, then we must make sure that those who were responsible for their proper upbringing carried out their obligations adequately. Unless their obligations were being carried out appropriately, then we cannot blame the youths for anything happening today. Because what the youths are facing today, all the consequences of bad governance, affects the youth more than any other person in this country. And that is the reason why we have youths today who are deranged, who have actually missed their tracks. And I think if we really want to address this problem and resolve this problem, then we need to attack it from the root cause. And the root cause is the type of governance system which we have. Unless that is resolved, unless they are being kicked out, then the youths will have no future. And the existence and continuity of our nation, Cameroon, will be, in quotes, at stake.
We'll be coming back to how youth engagement can actually say impact governance systems across Africa. We'll just be coming back to that. But I would like to get back to you, Dr. Nick. Now we live in a digital era, so to say a global village, but the world as it stands is actually facing some economic disruptions, digitalization, and a host of others amidst the plethora of challenges which the continent has at its feet. Now, when you look at all these problems, how feasible is it, or say how feasible would the youths in this particular era be able to actively engage in, say affairs that pertain to the African continent?
When you were asking when you were laying out the question, you mentioned the economy, right?
Yes,
I think
economic disruptions.
yeah, economic disruptions, and let us just say it once and for all that African countries have had political independence in the 1960s.
Yes.
All right, and what they don't have is economic independence. We need to understand that. Now, for any adult, take an adult like Dr. Asong here. Um, Interestingly, a medical doctor and a lawyer at the
Lawyer.
same time. He's a crazy guy. I love that. And you said something very interesting though. You lost your father, and you were with your mother, and you had a vision, and you said, "I must go into that medical school." You finished with medicine and said, "I must be a lawyer." You see that? And you did it right. So why can other youths not do the same? They must not necessarily be doctors like you. But that is the energy I was talking about. That focus, that determination, and that he demonstrated something. Number one, a self-discipline. Number two, he had a vision and a focus. Number three, he had to work hard on his vision, and and he was looking at the community, looking at his mother, and looking at everybody. I must be able to help. That is what everybody should do. It's not just for him. And because he had lost his father and had only the mother, you would think that he would have failed because the father figure was not there. But he braved it. That's all we are talking about. And so why did you make it when the same governments and everything are there? You would of course argue that when the government is not good, the number of you who can make it is fewer, and that is correct. Because like you said, bad governance makes a bad situation worse. It's adding insult to injury. That's what bad governance does. It adds insult to injury. We don't have to even debate that. It's established. There's no excuse for us to have bad governance, and we are saying that we'll do a lot better if our governance is correct, and we don't have to argue about that. It's a statement of fact. Now then, so it works like this. Dr. Asong was born, I think he must be about 30. 35. You're 35, okay. Dr. Asong was born a particular day 35 years ago. As he came out of the mother's womb, the umbilical cord was cut. That was his day of birth. And when leaving the maternity, he was given a birth certificate. That's what every nation gets when they get independence. But see, he went to nursery school, primary school, secondary school, university, left forward center, and today who is he? So you see, il a fait un parcours. That means he has had to train himself, develop thick skin and muscle to box the world. Are you getting me? And today, he's mature. And he didn't mature today, though. He matured when he was matured at 26, 27. Okay, he was already a medical doctor around 26, 27, thereabouts. He was able to feed himself. So, up until that time, technically he was receiving from the environment, receiving from his mother and everyone else. Then after he became a medical doctor, he started to give of himself into the world. Are you seeing that giving back? Though he was being paid a salary, that's not what we're talking about. He's giving back his services, he's giving back his love, and he's helping to build a community. Are you seeing that? So that is when he had his economic independence that emerges. We all have to go through that. Is it making some sense?
Yes.
So our African countries don't have that independence. Our African countries are still babies on their mother's nipples, sucking milk. That's who they are. Our economy is in the hands of foreigners. And if you want to hear a good story about that, listen to President Traore in Burkina Faso. Listen to President Kagame. Listen to all these other young presidents who have come up. Because the younger generation, they have the Android age, and they don't know about those accords that you sign in, those silly things. They say, we have gold, and we don't understand why we are poor. Explain that to us. Don't tell them any story. The gold is theirs, the diamond is theirs, everything is theirs, but they are poor and you are rich. No, it doesn't make sense. So it's it's some kind of awakening. And this mental awakening is part of that economic recovery. First, you must realize who you are and realize the resources at your disposal. Then train yourself to be able to do that. Because if you check with President Traore now, I'm speaking French now, he is training his youths to assemble computers. They are even assembling all these solar panels there. I'm sure you've seen that. And then they're purifying the gold, and I'm sure they will start cutting diamonds out there, and they will be making his lithium batteries. President Traore, in his mind, if the white man can do it, the black man can do it. There is no excuse. There is no excuse with him. So it is that mindset. When we all get that mindset, that President Traore has, when we all get the mindset that President Kagame has, Africa will be liberated. That's what we need. And it's not a one-man show. It's about all the youths in Africa, everybody knowing that without economic independence, we will remain slaves forever. That's where it starts. So what do we need? We need to all be training our children. You know, like I said before, if I'm wrong, correct me, doctor. 70 to 80% of all our students in Cameroon are in the arts subjects. About 15 to 20% are in the sciences. And it's from those sciences, I mean science, technology, engineering, economics, and mathematics. That, then you can add the soft skills to it. It is that STEM thing that you need to build a capacity for industry. And if you don't have it, there will be no industry. So we might have many universities, but they are not useful because they don't help in giving the capacity for industry. And wealth creation or the growth of the economy lies there. But you see, if you go to our universities and check them out, many of those our students who are there, they are studying marketing, MBAs, all these things. But let's ask ourselves a question. When you do marketing, it means you want to sell some goods or something, right? Goods and services. Whose goods are you selling? You are selling Chinese goods. You don't have your own goods to sell. Or if you want to sell your own goods, it's a raw tree trunk. So that is a problem that we need to correct. Once we begin to open our minds and do this thing that the president is referring to, import substitution, then we will emerge, and then every youth will be up to speed. And this is the interesting thing. All youths that would emerge in terms of capacity, all youths that would emerge in terms of economics, all youths that emerge in terms of ability to put money in their pockets will emerge as political leaders. Until you have that one, you'll be a fake political leader. Thanks.
Thank you immensely, Dr. Nick. Now, in a bit to proceed, ladies and gentlemen, now you earlier on mentioned the interrelation between youth engagement and the system of governance. Now, we'll get back to that, but let's try to contrast leadership in the past. We saw that the leaders that emerged and were able to change the continent which we are seeing today were leaders that were actually very young. They were able to champion their vision, and that was what actually created a path for the African continent. Now, with that in mind, when we look at the youths of today, could we really say that there is some kind of a paradigm shifting in the way things are being done?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of a paradigm shifting in the way things are being done. I think it's more of a problem of vision. In Africa, the type of politics which we have, it's a very self-centered type of politics. So most of our leaders, even though they did their best to make sure that Africa is what it is today, and they took power very young, you realize that they wanted to stick to power. So, you know, when you decide to stay so long in a particular place, automatically you pollute your mind, you pollute those around you, and monotony actually leads to more fatigue and less efficiency. So that is what has been happening. And that's why you realize that even though we had young leaders who took over, they took over in complicity with the colonial masters who actually placed them there, because if you look at it keenly, except for a few countries, but most countries who actually gained their independence and who actually had their first presidents were actually imposed, those presidents, by the colonialists.
Actually, sorry to cut you short, but I'm not sure we're in the same line. I was actually talking of the leaders that Africa continues to allude to. We're looking at leaders like Thomas Sankara, the Julius Nyerere, and a host of others.
Exactly. So I was trying to develop my point.
Yes.
So what I was trying to say is that even though these leaders took over, but then there was an issue. They lacked vision, and they wanted to stay in power. You will see, I'll take a very simple example when we're talking about President Kagame. good policies, good way of leading. I actually did my law school in Rwanda, but there is an issue. There is nobody to take over. Now in Rwanda, there is no young leader who a Rwandan can sit down and say, no, there is this person, this young guy who can take over. And that is where the problem is. Because most of our, and that's what I was trying to draw our attention to, is that most of our leaders, even though they have good plans and projects, but they lack the sense of continuity. And the sense of continuity is the most important thing in leadership. That is why I strongly believe that a good leader should not stay for long in power. A good leader will not even like to lead people all the time, because he will want to make others leaders. And when he succeeds in doing that, he's going to move away. Because being a leader is a lot of work. It's a lot of stress, dealing with people's problems every day. Whereas you could tell them what to do, they become leaders themselves, they become independent and autonomous, and you go your way. So that is the problem we are having in Africa today, because our leaders lack vision and our leaders have not put the youth at the center. And when I'm saying putting the youth at the center, there are so many conferences that have been organized around Africa, Youth Connect and all the like. But there is an issue. If you are still there in power, then it means that the Youth Connect stuff and the rest is just I don't know. It's just like it's like a whitewash. So the issue here is that we need to raise and become leaders who will be able to hand over power to others. So I strongly believe that if you are in a country and you are a leader and they cannot see any young person around you who is capable to take over leadership, then automatically there is a serious problem. And that's why what we have today in Africa. And you will see that most of our good leaders had the same problem. Whether it be Amadou Ahidjo, good things said about him, but then he stayed for long in power. He did not want to leave. Yes, he struggled and gave power, but later on he wanted to come back. You look at Gaddafi, very good leader, good projects, very interesting, developed Libya, but who had to take over? Nobody. When you look at Idris Deby, he did much for Chad. He fought for their independence. He helped them to get to a certain economic development standard. But then there was no other person to take over unless his son. So that's the problem we are having in Africa today, because our leaders have no vision. And for Africa to grow today, it's important that we should have a plan. A plan not only for 100 years, but a plan for 200 years. And I think that that's what the West did. And that's why today we can see infrastructures, there, roads that have aged for more than centuries. It's because the leaders at that moment had a vision for sustainable development. And that's what we are lacking. And that's why I always say our leaders are the problem, because if there is no alternance in power, then automatically development is something which will be very far-fetched. I would say it will be very far-fetched. Why? Because we might feel that when you have a leader who has been in power for 10, 20, 30 years, he's doing much, it looks nice. But the problem is, if he has not prepared somebody to take over, then all what he must have done would be in vain. I'll take a simple example, Gaddafi. Had it been he decided to leave power earlier and not stay for long there, things would have been different. I just strongly believe that things would have been different. We would have had a different president there who would have just made 2 terms or 5 years and gone his way, and there would have been no issue. So I think that the treasures we have today and the development we have achieved today could be preserved if we have a vision that actually prones alternance, prones individual developmental capacities to lead the youths to some sort of autonomy and independence that will actually foster development in Africa.
Thank you immensely for that. Though you evoked the issue of Libya, it's not something we can really evoke in the course of this edition. We should definitely come back to that in our subsequent edition, so to say. But back to you, Dr. Nick. And now we're gradually coming to the end
Yeah.
because time is actually going to cut us short. But when you look at the current state of leadership in Africa, let's not focus on Cameroon, but then how do governments ensure that the environment is actually conducive? Like you mentioned in your preamble, how do they ensure that it's actually conducive enough for the youths to be able to take part in affairs?
Oh, thank you very much. Um, I'm not so sure what everyone else is doing, but like Dr. Asong was saying, when we look across, we think everybody just wants to sit there to Daiki Cup. So it's very difficult to see a clear pathway. To also say that to be a good leader, you must also be a good follower.
Yes.
So when you are not a good follower, don't try to be a good leader. It will not work. Those two things go together. And then the people who are very good leaders and are not grooming others to come in their shoes or even do better than them, it's a huge problem really, and it needs to be condemned. So if you want your country to be stable, if you want people, grow your children in leadership in many other fields. So this is it. Get your children to have a sound education, but sound education, skills and theory and so on in the different fields, especially like the STEM industry that we talked about. But over here, let them, everybody needs to study leadership. Everybody needs to study management. Everybody needs to study ICT. Everybody needs to study agriculture. Everybody needs to study emotional intelligence, financial management, know a little bit about the law. No, you understand?
Yes.
Then, above all, everybody needs to know customer service. Everybody needs to have elements of salesmanship. That's it. So, yes, he's a medical doctor. I'm also a medical doctor. But to succeed in what I'm doing at St. Louis University, you'll be surprised. 15 years ago, I had to go down to the Commercial Avenue in Bamenda and I bought 2 O-level books, second-hand books, O-level economics. I came and sat down and read them cover to cover and understood them, because I realized that I was not doing well in whatever I was doing because I lacked basic understanding of things. You can never give what you don't have. It's a principle of life. While we were in secondary school, though we were doing our STEM, we are not interested in the economics. You see that? How can you be drawing graphs and blah, blah, blah. You make some careless noises about it. But most of our failures are because we exist in these small boxes and we don't know what we are doing. And so we need to collapse all those boxes and do transversal kind of things. And then you are a leader in this way, but understand what is around you, understand how to do things together and so on. Until we do this, and these are things that we just go to school and study subjects. You go to start from O level to university and you study history.
In a particular
this
branch.
one, you study philosophy. It's not going to help us. No.
African youth should be diverse.
Yes, should be diverse. Have a big brain, and then work things out. And when you are talking about age, the president of France was a president at very 39, and then look at his prime minister. His prime minister is just a kid. And then look at the president of Burkina Faso doing somewhere. He's only 35. So it's not at 35 that you'll be taught how to clean your nose.
Just to wrap up now this edition, I'll come out with you, Dr. Asong. Now, in a bit to crown it up, what's the way forward?
Well, I think the way forward is youths must get to the consciousness of the fact that things are not going well. They first of all have a responsibility vis-a-vis their own nation and their state. A state cannot develop, and the state has no future without the active participation of its youths. So that's the first thing youth must understand, and that they have everything necessary, whether it be the intelligence, whether it be the physical force, to be able to take this nation to another level. We cannot count on the actual government now to help us, because for over 40 years we have not seen anything good. So at a particular point, we must understand that we represent the continuity of our country and also Africa, and we must take our destinies into our hands. So my call to all youths is that they have to get involved in politics. They have to stand up and say, yes, we are having all the difficulties we have today, and there are consequences of bad governance, but we can change it. We can bring the necessary change which is necessary for us to correct everything that has been done over the past decades. And that's why we have to stand up. We have to stand up, and those youths who are more educated, those youths who have been empowered, will have to draw the other youths into the banquet, and so that together we can do something wonderful for our nation. So youths must get involved in politics, and I believe that if we stand together, we work collectively, hand in hand, then we shall be able to create the necessary atmosphere and necessary conditions that will help us to prosper. Like what we are seeing in Burkina Faso and in other countries where we have young leaders. We can do the same, and we should be encouraged and not give up.
African youths should be encouraged. African youths should be diverse in a bit for them to be able to champion the development of the African continent. I'll say thank you, Dr. Nick, for your contribution on today's edition of the show.
It was a pleasure being with you again, and the two of you are youth, so I wish you the best.
Thank you, immensely, Dr. ASONG, for your contribution on this edition of Donkey Point.
Thanks, Madam NJIX. Thanks, Dr. And thanks to our viewers.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's on that note that we draw down the curtains of today's edition of Talking Points over your number one Pan-African channel, For You Media Africa. We say save the rendezvous for Friday this week, and of course, do stay in company of our programs.